This magnetic sense inherent to human beings, animals and insects, has already been largely destroyed within man on Earth. For decades now he has been under the steady, greatly enhanced influence of artificial electromagnetic waves, or rather oscillations, which greatly exceed the normal, planet-related measurements and are generated by man's own thoughtlessness. As a consequence, he is now, and has been for some time, incapable of applying and relying on his magnetic sense. Hence, he can no longer recognize, grasp and perceive many items and events in nature in the manner that animals are able to, although their magnetic sense is increasingly harmed also through the irresponsibility of mankind on Earth. Birds and animals, for instance, are guided by their magnetic sense during their annual migrations or flights from one region to another when they frequently traverse many thousands of kilometers. The longer they are exposed to this electromagnetism, the more the magnetic sense of orientation of these migratory animals and birds is upset and causes their death, for many of them. Whales, for instance, lose their orientation and become stranded somewhere on riverbanks or in the rivers, where they die a terrible death, a situation that is increasingly becoming more common even for other aquatic wildlife forms. With increasing frequency, herds of many wild animals are losing their sense of orientation because their magnetic sense is upset. This causes them to flee and plunge, panic-stricken, over cliffs and crevasses to their death, etc. Thunderstorms, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, as well as other great calamities of nature's elements also produce increased magnetic waves or oscillations. Animals and birds sense these increased electromagnetic oscillations and behave accordingly. They flee or seek sanctuary elsewhere. The same also applies to man, and will continue to for as long as his magnetic sense is unimpaired. Unfortunately, terrestrial man lost the use of this capability a long time ago. The loss can be traced back to his spinelessness, which began very early in his development and continues to advance even now, for he increasingly withdraws from a coexistence with nature and creation's laws and directives. As a result, he continues to unlearn many of the things he previously learned. Billy says, but how can this be reconciled with the technological and medical progress human beings are making? I am speaking here of genetic technology, for instance, as well as genetic therapy, genetic medicine, genetic adjustments and genetic manipulations and so forth. As part of this progress, I would include also the creation of a bionic man, clones and human genetic modifications, even though many of these items are still in their early stages of development. Ptaah says, an immutable law states that progress cannot be stopped regardless of all the degeneration and destruction. At some point along the way, stagnation will occur, but progress will continue until that time and then taper off very slowly. Billy says, yet all of the things I mentioned before will continue to be developed or maybe even newly discovered and augmented until perfection, so to speak, or the highest possible status has been achieved. This will occur in spite of all obstructions and bans, concerns and the screeching of some individuals who wish to obstruct progress, particularly however the sectarians and government agencies. According to them, all of this is against nature and all ethics, and it is blasphemous beyond compare, which is total nonsense, of course. In my opinion, and judging from everything I have learned from you people, the entire development related to genetic sciences, gene manipulation, genetic modifications, genetic interference, genetic transformations, genetic medicine, gene technology as a whole, cannot be stopped. After all, it is an inevitable result of evolution. Therefore, the whole genetic technology will make its breakthrough in spite of some opposition. In fact, for the time being, breakthroughs won't be repressed in any sector of life, even though, someday, it may come into play. In the future, man will create genetically manipulated clones and artificial humans, such as androids, who will be equipped with a half-machine, half-bionic body and an artificial, biological brain. This will be done in the same way that human beings are genetically modified. Doubtless to say, humans will soon live very much longer, possibly even for centuries, through genetic manipulations and influences. Likewise, genetic modifications will be performed on animals, plants, food items, medicine and so forth. This development truly cannot be repressed, although many sectarians, pseudo-humanists, pseudo-seers and thinkers continue to rebel against it today, as they stupidly holler against this progress and invent laws to prohibit it. Such laws are wrong even today, and individuals who fight for them are acting irresponsibly. Fighting against progress is only appropriate when there are actions against creational laws through genetic manipulations, as is the case when life is destroyed or propelled toward degeneration in behavior, actions or living. Genetic technology makes possible freedom from suffering and illness. It also brings innumerable advantages, relief and an immeasurable progress that is capable of preventing any further increase in overpopulation. It causes much suffering and misery to disappear as long as this development is accorded the required space and necessary understanding. Ptaah says, "Your words are in total accord with my own views." Billy says, "Many people concern themselves with this subject, but many others are of the silly and uneducated opinion that everything is pure fantasy. It has always been like this since olden days, which is the reason why Jules Verne and Leonardo da Vinci and many others have been defamed as charlatans and fantasists. The full truth is, however, that there is absolutely nothing that man is capable of inventing, dreaming, thinking and fantasizing which cannot be realized. The reason is that man cannot think, fantasize, dream or invent anything that cannot be manufactured, realized or produced, respectively. Anything man thinks, invents, dreams or fantasizes can be realized or effected, one way or another, technically or by way of the consciousness. Hence, there is nothing in the entire universe that man cannot effect or produce once he has invented, thought, fantasized or dreamed up something. The only things he cannot realize, produce or achieve are maniacal ideations, such as those religious manias or fanaticism or illusions, for instance, that impair the consciousness of individuals afflicted with the mania as maniacal ideations and illusions. Ptaah says, "You have expressed yourself very appropriately." Billy says, "In one of our previous conversations you mentioned the number of dead who were murdered by Christianity throughout its existence up to December 31, 1992, through wars, church courts, fanaticism and other causes. You also mentioned the number of those people who were murdered by other religions over the past 3,000 years. Here is my question: does this number also include all of those victims who had been slaughtered through Judaism, roughly 3,500 years ago?" Ptaah says, "Are you referring to the 1500 BC period?" Billy says, "Exactly, that is the time I mean." Ptaah says, "One moment. I am not familiar with this data, I must retrieve it first. Yes, here it is: over a period of 1,000 years, counted back from 1500 BC, a total of 19,463,30 people were brutally and inhumanely slaughtered by the forefathers of the Jews, the Hebrews and others." Billy says, 19,463,000. That is an enormous number of people who suffered a forced death in only 1,000 years through religious madness and racial obsession, fanaticism, church courts, commands of God, religious wars and judgments of God, along with other insanities. And all of this was perpetrated by a small group of single, megalomaniacal, degenerate people who had become obsessed with their faith. This number is almost identical to the people who had been killed by Christianity over nearly 2,000 years. Yet, even today great numbers of people are murdered in religious mania and fanaticism, many of them in masses. Religions and religious sects are currently more powerful than ever before, although the opposite may seem true. Together with sciences, politics, crime, technology and the military, as well as each branch of the economy. Religions are pulling everything into their powerful grip. Never before has any type of life form possessed so much power over the earth as man does today. And all of these people who represent and exert this earth-conquering power, the people who are in charge of all this, are so irresponsible that they never feel addressed or concerned. Every one of them lives irresponsibly and without concern at the expense of their own, ours and all of humankind's descendants. Oftentimes these irresponsible people even carry famous names. Yet, many people who have famous names and titles are simply major, irresponsible and vicious criminals. They don't give a hoot about the fact that the universe, galaxies, Earth and every life form, nature, life itself and man, are all the holy thought and holy work of creation. These errant and guilty individuals not only deceive others but themselves as well. Usually they think of themselves as being better, greater, and shrewder than they actually are. They have never heard of the concept that, at all times, man should view and comport himself merely as grand, as he truly is, according to the motto, always admit to what you really are. These people want to be fawned over, and they only feel good about themselves when they are praised and adored, because they are addicted to praise and their own image. For this reason they cannot understand why they have no true friends, but only yes-men and parasites, who do not dare voice any criticism and are only concerned with their own well-being and food. None of them understands that someone who thoughtfully and justly criticizes another human being's actions, thoughts, feelings, lifestyle and opinion, among other things, is that person's true friend. He who praises but omits criticism is the worst enemy. Ptaah says, "May your words reach the ears of the guilty ones." Billy says, "Well, even if they hear it, they will hardly concern themselves with it, simply because they are so self-righteous in their irresponsible behavior that they do not even feel addressed." But now back once more to the purported abductions of Earthlings by extraterrestrials, particularly in North and South America, but lately also in Germany. Such claims have repeatedly occurred. Attempts have been made in the past and present to prove the truth of the claims through hypnosis. If these claims were true, it would mean that, allegedly, more than 3.5 million human beings on Earth have had examination contacts, and many women, particularly in North and South America, purportedly were impregnated. There are even some silly assertions that, as a result of these impregnations, children have been born who are half terrestrial and half extraterrestrial and are called hybrids. Ptaah says, "This is so much incredible nonsense. First of all, very few examination contact incidents were recorded in recent years and, secondly, no impregnations of Earth females by extraterrestrial intelligences have occurred. These so-called hybrids, of which irrational newspaper and magazine editors report, are nothing more than freaks and mutations of a purely terrestrial nature. They can be traced back to genetic defects caused by the parents or some diverse, very harmful environmental influences. Beyond the shadow of any doubt, however, I can confirm that, at the present time, no descendants live on Earth, or elsewhere on alien worlds, who are sired either with women from Earth and extraterrestrial men or extraterrestrial women and men from Earth. Anyone who claims otherwise is a despicable liar and defamer, be it Elizabeth Clara or some other fools who currently state such things. As a rule, even assertions made in a hypnotic state are mere lies and defamations, and are made either by the hypnotized individuals themselves or are thrust upon them by third parties, possibly even by the hypnotist. The claim that a person in a hypnotic state does not lie, cheat and, therefore, always speaks the truth, is simply not accurate. The fact is that in a hypnotic state a person can lie and cheat just as he or she can in a normal, non-hypnotized state. This fact is exploited by many people involved in UFO and purported abduction cases, among others. The individuals involved simply wish to bluster and make themselves appear important. Frequently the hypnotic state is even feigned, which is not difficult for human beings to do. This feigning cannot be detected and recognized